Most religious traditions answer one version of the question, what happens to you after you die? Heaven, hell, reincarnation, dissolution, some form of continuation or ending. The Book of Enoch answers a different question, a more specific and more uncomfortable one. Not what happens eventually, what is happening right now. Where are the people who have already died? Your grandparents, people from 1,000 years ago, people from 10,000 years ago. Where are they at this moment? Not after the final judgment. The Book of Enoch is clear that the final judgment has not happened yet, that it is a future event. Between death and that judgment, what is the state of the dead? What is their experience? Where, geographically, are they? Chapter 22 of the Book of Enoch answers this with architectural precision. There is a mountain. It is in the west. It has 4 hollow places carved into it, each smooth and vast and dark, and each of those chambers holds a different category of the dead. This is not poetry. This is not metaphor. The Book of Enoch treats this as a report. Enoch is taken there. He sees the chambers. He asks questions. An archangel explains the system. What the archangel describes is one of the most specific accounts of the state between death and final judgment in any ancient Jewish text. Enoch is traveling in the northwest when his angelic guide shows him a high mountain. 1 Enoch chapter 22, verses 1 through 3. I saw the high mountains and the peaks and the carved hollow places in it. The hollow places were deep and wide and very smooth. How smooth and how deep! The spirit of the holy angels who was with me, Raphael, said to me, these hollow places serve to gather together the spirits, the souls of the dead. They were created for this purpose, so that all the souls of men might be gathered here. These places will hold them until the day of their judgment and until the fixed time. The fixed time, a term also used in Hebrew for the appointed festival seasons, means there is a set date. The souls of the dead are not in a timeless void. They are in a waiting state with an appointed end. The mountain is in the west. In Hebrew cosmology, direction carries meaning. East is the direction of origin, of Eden, of the rising sun and new beginnings. West is the direction of ending, the setting sun, the close of the day, the horizon past which light disappears. Ancient Israelite cosmology consistently placed the realm of the dead in the west. When the tabernacle faces east, the direction you are not facing is west, the direction of the dying of the light. The Book of Enoch places its 4 chambers on a mountain in that same direction, and it places the archangel Raphael at the entrance, the healer, the guide. The word Sheol appears 65 times in the Hebrew Bible. It is usually translated as the grave or as death, or left untranslated in many modern versions. But Sheol is not simply a metaphor for death. In ancient Israelite thinking, it is a place, a real location below the earth where the dead go when they die, all of them, righteous and wicked alike, in the oldest strata of Hebrew thought. When Jacob hears that Joseph is dead, he says, I will go down to Sheol mourning for my son. When the psalmist fears death, he says, you do not abandon my soul to Sheol. When Jonah is inside the fish, he says he called out to God from the belly of Sheol. Sheol is a destination. It has a geography. You descend to it. The Book of Enoch does something very specific with the tradition of Sheol. It opens the interior of the concept and describes what it contains. It takes the vague, general category, a place of the dead beneath the earth, and populates it with architectural detail. 4 chambers, a spring of water, separated compartments, an angel who maintains the system. The Hebrew Bible says the dead go to Sheol and stops there. The Book of Enoch says, yes, and here is what Sheol looks like from the inside, and here is what the different categories of dead people experience while they wait. This is the text operating in its characteristic mode, not contradicting the Hebrew Bible, but going further, deeper, providing the detail that earlier texts leave unnamed. The angel who guides Enoch through the four chambers is named Raphael. His name in Hebrew is Raphael, which means God heals or God has healed. The root Rapha means to mend, to stitch back together, to restore what was broken. He is one of the four archangels named in what Enoch, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, each assigned to a specific domain of creation. Raphael's domain in 1 Enoch is the healing of the earth. After the Watchers descended and corrupted the land, after the Nephilim consumed everything, and the earth itself cried out, it was Raphael who was sent to heal it, to bind Azazel, to restore what had been damaged by forbidden knowledge. Raphael is the healing principle of creation, which makes it striking that Raphael is also the guide to the realm of the dead, the healer, the one who repairs what was broken, leading Enoch through the chambers of those who could no longer be healed in life, who are now awaiting their final judgment. There is a tradition in the Book of Tobit, a text closely related to the Enoch tradition, in which Raphael accompanies a man named Tobias on a journey, protects him from a demon, heals his father's blindness, and only reveals at the end that he is one of the 7 angels who present the prayers of the holy ones before the throne of God. Raphael's role in ancient Jewish literature is consistently threefold: guide, healer, revealer. In chapter 22, he is doing all three. He guides Enoch. He reveals the structure of the afterlife. And in doing so, he is offering something that functions like healing, the knowledge that the system of justice is real, that the dead are not simply forgotten. The first hollow place has light in it and a spring of water. 1 Enoch 22:9. This is the spirit of the holy, and the spring of water which I see is the spring for them, and the brightness for the eternally righteous. Here the souls of the righteous wait. What strikes the attentive reader is what this chamber is not. It is not paradise. It is not the final reward. The souls of the righteous are not yet in glory, not yet at rest, in any ultimate sense. They are waiting with a spring of water, which in Hebrew thought means waiting with righteousness, with covenant, with the mark of those who belong to God, but waiting. The spring of water is not incidental. Water in Hebrew scripture carries enormous theological weight. At the creation, the Spirit of God moved over the waters. The covenant is sealed at rivers. The psalmist says, as the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul pants for you, O God. In the New Jerusalem at the end of Revelation, a river of the water of life flows from the throne of God. Here, in the intermediate chamber of the righteous dead, there is a spring, not the final river, a spring. The source is present, but the fullness has not yet arrived. The righteous are already distinguished from the wicked. They have light and water, while others have neither. But they are not yet in the full presence. They wait. The Book of Enoch makes this distinction carefully. Death does not trigger the reward. The judgment does. Death is the sorting. The judgment is the sentencing. The righteous dead are in the right chamber, but the final verdict has not yet been delivered. The second hollow place has no light, no spring of water, and it is already a place of suffering. This chamber is for sinners, but a specific category, the ones who committed evil in this life and were never punished for it, people who did harm and died without consequence. The Book of Enoch does not allow that situation to persist beyond death. The text says, "Their spirits are set apart, and their suffering is great, and they are bound there until the day of the great judgment." The timing here is what makes this theologically significant. They are being punished now, before the final judgment, before the resurrection of the dead, before the great accounting at the end of history. First Enoch has a two-stage punishment system: the intermediate punishment, which begins at death, and the final judgment at the consummation of the age. The intermediate punishment is real. It is described as suffering. It corresponds to the imbalance created in this life. If you were never punished for your evil, the intermediate state begins the correction. The darkness is the absence of that spring of water. No righteousness, no covenant, no connection to the source of life. These souls are alive enough to suffer, but separated from the things that make life good, and they will face a second, final judgment at the end of the age. The Book of Enoch does not offer easy comfort to those who think evil goes unnoticed. It offers the opposite, a detailed account of the mechanism by which no evil goes unnoticed, including the mechanism that applies between death and judgment. The third hollow place is dark, but there is a spirit inside it who cries out. Enoch hears the crying and asks Raphael whose spirit this is, and Raphael names him. This is the spirit of Abel, who was slain by Cain his brother. The spirit of Abel will cry out until his offspring are destroyed from the surface of the earth, and until his seed is obliterated from the seed of humanity. Genesis chapter 4, verse 10. God says to Cain, "The voice of your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground." The Book of Enoch takes that passage and makes it architecturally real. Abel's blood is not a figure of speech for injustice. Abel's spirit is in a specific chamber in a mountain in the west, and it has not stopped crying out since the first murder. This chamber is specifically for those who were killed unjustly, the wrongfully murdered, the victims of violence who received no justice in their lifetimes. Their spirits do not wait passively, they petition. The Hebrew root behind this kind of crying out is tzark, the same root used when the Israelites cry out under the slavery of Egypt, the cry that God hears and responds to, the cry that triggers the Exodus. Abel's spirit is crying out in that exact register. It is not only a cry of pain, it is a legal cry, a formal demand for justice addressed to heaven from a spirit that has been making that demand since the beginning of human time. The intermediate state in this chamber is not silence. It is the loudest room in the mountain. The fourth hollow place is the most difficult to interpret and the most theologically unusual. It is for people who were not righteous, but also were not the architects of evil, associates of the lawless, participants in the general sin of the world, but not the chief sinners, not the ones who designed the violence or led the corruption. Their condition in this chamber is described as a distinct category, but there is something said about them that is more consequential than the level of their suffering. They will not be raised on the day of the great judgment. In First Enoch's theology, resurrection, the raising of the dead, is not universal. The righteous dead will be raised and rewarded. The murdered dead will be raised and vindicated. The chief sinners will be raised and face their final sentence. But this fourth category will not be raised. The text says, "Their souls will not be punished in the day of great judgment, nor will they be raised from there. They simply remain." And eventually, the text implies, their souls dissolve. Not eternal torment, but ending. This doctrine appears almost nowhere in mainstream religious teaching. The concept of a soul that does not persist forever, that ends rather than continues into eternity, sometimes called conditional immortality, is one of the oldest forms of this idea in written form. The Book of Enoch presents it not as mercy and not as cruelty, but as proportionality. 4 categories, 4 outcomes, each one calibrated to the specific nature of a person's life and guilt. Not one fate for the righteous and one for the wicked. 4 distinct fates, none of them the same. The final judgment in verse Enoch is not a moment of discovery. God learning what people did, opening a book, and finding the record for the first time. The Book of Enoch presents judgment as a moment of finalization. God has known what every person did. The chambers of the dead have already sorted the dead according to what they did. The intermediate state has already begun the accounting. The judgment finalizes what the intermediate state has held open. The righteous dead are raised. They receive their full reward, not just the spring of water in the waiting chamber, but the full light of a new existence. The murdered dead are raised. Abel's petition is heard. The legal claim of every person who was killed unjustly and never saw justice in their lifetime. That claim is adjudicated before the great court, and the verdict falls against their killers. The chief sinners, who were already suffering in the second chamber, face a second and greater punishment, the finalization of the sentence that began at death. And the fourth category, the partial sinners, is not raised. Their intermediate state ends without escalation. The Book of Enoch's picture of judgment is not a balance scale where good deeds are weighed against bad deeds. It is a categorization system. Which of the 4 chambers were you in? That chamber determines what happens to you at the end. The sorting happens at death. The sentencing happens at judgment. These are 2 different events. Most religious tradition collapses them into one. 1 Enoch keeps them carefully separated. In Luke chapter 16, Jesus tells a parable. A poor man named Lazarus lies at the gate of a rich man covered in sores. Both men die. Lazarus is carried by angels to Abraham's bosom. The rich man finds himself in Hades, in torment. He looks up and sees Abraham far away, with Lazarus beside him. He calls out, "Father Abraham, have mercy on me. Send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am in agony in this flame." Abraham answers, "Between us and you, a great gulf has been fixed. No one can cross from our side to yours. No one can cross from yours to ours." The structure of that parable maps precisely onto 1 Enoch chapter 22. 2 groups of the dead in the intermediate state, before the final judgment. One group is restful, connected to a great patriarch, the equivalent of the spring of water. One group is in torment. A barrier exists between them. The dead can perceive each other across it. The judgment has not yet happened. The rich man is not in the lake of fire. He is in Hades, the intermediate state. He does not ask to be released from eternal punishment. He asks for a drop of water, the spring of water in 1 Enoch's chamber of the righteous, the absence of water in the chamber of the sinners. The letter of Jude quotes 1 Enoch directly. 2 Peter references it. The Book of Enoch was known to the New Testament writers. The map Jesus describes in Luke 2016 is the map that 1 Enoch chapter 22 drew first. Jesus was not inventing a new afterlife. He was describing a geography his audience already knew. The Book of Enoch does not leave the afterlife vague. It does not say God is good, and somehow everything will be fine. It gives you a mountain with 4 rooms. It names the angel who maintains the rooms. It names one of the residents, Abel, by name. It specifies what each room contains, what experience awaits each category of person who enters, and what will happen to each category when the judgment comes. This specificity is either very comforting or very uncomfortable, depending on which chamber you would enter. But the impulse behind it is serious in a way that most popular religion about death is not. Most religious teaching on death is comfort. You will be okay. Your loved ones are in a better place. There is something after this. The Book of Enoch agrees that there is something after this. But it goes further. It says the something after this is structured and specific and directly determined by how you lived. The murdered get their own chamber because the murdered are a specific category that requires specific accounting. The partially guilty get their own outcome because their guilt was a specific kind that requires a different sentence. This is a cosmology that believes moral weight is real, that what you do matters in a granular, specific way that the universe tracks and accounts for. The question of where your soul goes after you die is one of the oldest questions human beings ask. Every tradition has some answer. Most answers are warped by design. The Book of Enoch offers something different. A mountain in the west, 4 chambers, and an archangel named the Healer standing at the entrance, ready to explain what each room is for. Subscribe to Enoch Unveiled, the ancient texts, the hidden knowledge. Subscribe now and turn on notifications.